Really quick, everybody, this entire video will be timestamped, so if you don't want to watch the link and just get straight into a different fight, please check the pinned comment or the little red bar right down below you. Again, this entire video will be timestamped, and I'd appreciate you guys watching whatever part you like. If you're sticking around, guys, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels, and welcome back to UFC Fight Night full card breakdown and predictions. I'm going to tell you all of my predictions for each fight. We're going to go through every single one. Again, timestamps are there if you would like to use them. With that being said, let's get into the first fight for today. Starting off with the first fight, we have the return of Jessica Rose Clark versus UFC newcomer Tainara Lisboa. Now, Lisboa, I have went back and checked out. She has a good Muay Thai base, but of course, like the opponents that she's taken on, there's not really anything significant to take a look at there, but she does have a solid set of skills, especially on the stand-up. She is susceptible to takedowns, but she has shown very good defense once she's getting to the ground. It's not one of those Muay Thai fighters that will sit down and then just like kind of give up for the round. So that's something to worry about when you're fighting Jessica Rose Clark. Jessica Rose Clark, coming off of an arm injury, I don't remember actually if her arm fully broke or not, but her last fight, she was stuck in an armbar, and I just remember going, ooh. So I know she was treating an injury there. Her arm was hurt to some extent, so who knows how much she's actually been training. When did she like fully get back to fight camp? Is it just been the last 2 months? We don't know. There's a little bit of a question mark there. However, I'm still not overly impressed with her skill set in general, so I do like the UFC newcomer to win this one in Lisboa because she actually, and this is something that's a little bit of a problem in the women's divisions, is there's a little bit of a lack of skill set. You know what I mean? Jessica Rose Clark doesn't suck by any means, but it's just like her record kind of speaks for itself. Her last 2 losses. I don't mind the underdog in this one. But, of course, I'm done betting on women's MMA. Anything can happen. We've seen that with UFC 288 just now. It just got proven again. Anything can happen in these fights, but I am going to go with Lisboa for this win. Moving on to the next fight, and this one's quite interesting. We have Gabe Green versus Bryan Battle. So both fighters are coming off of a pretty bad loss after having some, like, fantastic wins in the UFC. So Bryan Battle, okay, he's been one of those fighters that people have been keeping their eye on, myself included. Getting better every single time we've seen him. The entire time that we've seen him in the UFC so far, even before that, he's been looking better and better and better. However, this last loss that he just had, he got absolutely dominated. If I'm not mistaken, there were multiple 10-8 rounds in there. He was working the whole time and actively trying to win the fight, but he finally came up with that fight, and oh my god, I don't know what was going on, but it was horrible. It was a really bad loss to have. So Bryan Battle, it actually took me off of the hype train a little bit. I was on the Bryan Battle hype train, now a little bit off of it. Gabe Green, on the other hand, has, of course, you can see a little bit of a spotty record here, but it's okay, 11-4. He's looked great in his last 2 fights, but that, keep in mind, that's 2 years and 1 year ago, coming back 7 months ago. Garry kind of destroyed him. It wasn't to the level that Bryan Battle just got destroyed. My whole point is both guys are coming off of a loss where it's like, ooh, that wasn't really good. You know what I mean? However, when taking a look at these fighters, you got to consider Bryan Battle, every single time we've seen him, he's improved. So is this loss going to have him improve even more? Is he going to fill any really, really bad holes in his game? Perhaps. But the thing is, like, I think he was just not as good last time as his opponent. I don't know if there was, like, any particular problems. I would have to go back and watch a fight. So I don't know. Judging by Bryan Battle's history, he's going to come back better than this. But this is that first dominating loss that he's taken in his career. I don't know if that will affect him negatively. But judging by Bryan Battle's history, again, I do think that it will ultimately be better for him. Gabe Green, on the other hand, he's taken losses before. There's not too much to say about it. Garry's a very, very solid contender. No, like, absolutely no shame in losing him. That's another thing that I didn't mention is Garry is a much better loss to have than Bryan Battle here, okay? On the feet, this fight should be kind of similar back and forth with Bryan Battle, and this is the reason that I'm still going to take Bryan Battle. 1, because like I said, he's always improving. I think he will continue to improve. And 2, he has a better chance of finishing. Whether it's on the feet or on the ground, I feel like he will just have that little bit of an edge where Bryan Battle is more likely to submit or knock out Gabe Green. Gabe Green is a good fighter, but I don't see that same like killer instinct that Bryan Battle has. Bryan Battle is one of those fighters that will never give up, and that's why I'm picking him. I think he'll be just a little bit better than Gabe Green everywhere. I don't imagine a domination anywhere, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bryan Battle did end up finishing this fight. I'm going with Bryan Battle. Moving on to the next fight, and this one's going to be really tough to pick. We have Yeon Kim versus Mandy Bohm. Now, Mandy Bohm, I'll start with her. Coming into the UFC, she looked like she was going to be a really good prospect, okay? But then she just had 2 absolutely horrible losses. Like, they were bad, and the losses didn't exactly age too well in Ariana Lipski here and Victoria Leonardo. Yeon Kim is on a 4-fight losing streak, okay? But here's the thing. Some of those decisions could have went the other way. So it depends how you want to take a look at that. You know what I mean? And she has fought better competition. Skill-wise, Mandy Bohm might have a wrestling advantage, but Yeon Kim has been proven to be way more durable, and she has hung in there with better competition. Mandy Bohm just came into the UFC and got dominated twice. But here's the thing, 9-6 on a 4-fight losing streak, 250 favorite. I don't even mind underdog odds if you want. If you're looking for an underdog, Mandy Bohm, it's really good odds for that. I do not think she should be a minus 250 favorite on a 4-fight skid. At the end of the day, she did lose these fights and did not look good. But again, I can't ride with Mandy Bohm on this one just because coming to the UFC, she got dominated. You know, she didn't look good. I'm not confident in her. But again, women's MMA, anything can happen. I'm going to go with Yeon Kim, but who knows what's going to happen in this one. Moving on to the next fight, and this is one of the fights that I'm more confident on. We have Natan Levy versus Pete Rodriguez. Now, Pete Rodriguez coming to the UFC, he's had some nice wins, but Pete Rodriguez, I don't believe, and I mean absolutely no disrespect with this, okay? I mean, again, no disrespect at all, and I apologize if you guys saw that. There's a fruit fly in here now, and I got my teeth sitting around me. Anyways, I don't know if the camera picked that up. Anyways, so Pete Rodriguez coming in. He lost to Jack Dado Maddalena. But here's the thing. Jack Dado Maddalena, it's a really, really good loss to have, but then he comes back with a win 5 months ago against Mike Jackson. There's nothing to say about that. You might as well not even have had that fight. You might as well have fought like a 12-year-old. You know what I mean? Again, I mean no disrespect, but that's true. Pete Rodriguez doesn't seem like he's UFC caliber. He came in and before that he looked good, but still he doesn't look like he's there. He's kind of a brawler. Yeah, he has power, but that's just about it. It won't work in the lightweight division. You might get some wins here and there, but Natan Levy, he's looked great so far. He's coming off of great wins. Even 4 months ago, he looked good. He's a really, really solid fighter. He's probably going to come in there, wrestle, do whatever he wants. He's a good all-around fighter, but I can see him taking down Pete Rodriguez and just winning a decision. Pete Rodriguez, all he really has is that one shot, and I don't think he's going to get it on Natan Levy. I'm really high on Natan Levy right now. This fight, and I will make a video of my bets later on in the week, but I am actually going to be betting on this fight. But the problem is he's a minus 300 favorite. Natan Levy, it makes sense to be a minus 300 favorite. I'm going to put him in a parlay piece, but this is one of the fights that I'm very confident. I think Natan Levy will just do what he wants, probably win a decision. Moving on to the next fight, we have Carlos Ulberg versus Ihor Potieria. Now, this one I'm also kind of confident in, but it should. I believe Carlos Ulberg should win this fight, but we have Ihor Potieria, that fighter who has a very solid chin, is a little bit of a brawler. He's one of those fighters where it's kind of brawling with some technique behind it. He finds a way of eating shots and continues to win. He's coming off of a win against Mauricio Rua, but again, like we were just talking about with Pete Rodriguez and the win against Mike Jackson, that means absolutely nothing at this point. Before that, he suffered a loss, and then before that, he was on some solid wins. I believe this is the only fight in the UFC that he's had, though. Or no, yeah, Contender Series, I was right there. Sorry. Apologies. So, even if you dig through his fights, though, even if you look at all of his old fights, Ihor Potieria, it's the same thing. He kind of gets hit and then will find a knockout. So, that's always an issue there. And I was thinking about betting on this fight because I think Carlos Ulberg, he is a very good technical fighter. Looked great. He's only had one loss so far, and that was to Kenny Nizichuu, which we just saw at UFC 288. The dude is very good, so I don't hold that loss as oh, you know what? He fought a guy that's pretty good. You know, I think that's a good loss to have. Not that, you know what I mean. The loss aged well, but after that, great KOs. Great KOs, and he has some solid power in his hands. I like Carlos Ulberg in this fight. I think he will be, this is probably definitely going to be striker for striker. I have a hard time seeing this fight going to the ground. I think Ulberg will do what he wants in the striking, but the problem is with Potieria, very solid chin. I can see him finding that upset. You know what I mean? It just happens with him. But if it doesn't, Ulberg should just do what he wants. He should be better in the striking no matter what. So I don't know. Tough fight. I was thinking about betting on this one going not the distance. But again, it's difficult to pick with Potieria. Ulberg should win this fight. I believe he's better. He's better stand-up and probably better on the ground, but I don't think this fight will go to the ground. I think it's going to be a striking match. Ulberg, yeah, I'm going to pick him. Sorry, I'm just thinking I can see it right now, Potieria coming out with that win, but I am going to pick Carlos Ulberg for my official prediction. Moving on to the next fight. This one, I don't know what to think. We have Cody Stamann versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. Both fighters are very solid. The bantamweight division, like I always say, it is the toughest division in the history of MMA. You could take guys who are unranked, you could throw them against the top contenders. Anything could happen. I think the odds, they're near even, man. I agree with it completely. Cody Stamann, coming off of 2 wins. Before that, he's had some really tough losses, and he's always an active fighter, right? But take a look at his losses. They are very good losses to have. And Jimmy Rivera, I think Jimmy Rivera is a very, very underrated and great fighter, even though he had a rocky road in the UFC. Literally all 3 of these losses aged well, in my opinion. Then he had a good win against Eddie Wineland, but the problem is Eddie Wineland, make of that what you will. But then against Lacerda, he looked great. Very solid win against a very solid contender. Douglas Silva da Andrade coming off a loss against Said Nurmagomedov. Again, very, very good loss to have. But he did look good in that fight. Like, I don't really knock him for that. He definitely looked better than Cody Stamann. That's the thing. But before that, Cody Stamann definitely has the better fighters that he fought, you know what I mean? But Douglas Silva da Andrade, he's a very good fighter. Both fighters are really well-rounded. Cody Stamann, probably a little bit better wrestler. I worry about the age of 37 for Douglas Silva da Andrade. He'd still look good in his last fight, but it's very difficult as a 37-year-old to fight in the bantamweight division, especially since he's fighting a guy like Cody Stamann. Cody Stamann, again, both these fighters are really good. And this is like, I'm like 55-45, leaning towards Douglas Silva da Andrade. If it goes to a decision, I can see both guys working. Neither of them really finished. Like Douglas Silva, he has had his finishes, but Cody Stamann, it's so tough to finish that guy. I don't think these were all decisions. Yeah, submission. My apologies, but still, it is very difficult to finish Cody Stamann. I feel like technically Douglas Silva da Andrade will be a little bit better in the striking department, but if Cody Stamann wants to wrestle, might do better there. 33 years old, coming out of his prime now against 37. Yeah, I'm like 55-45 for Douglas Silva on this one. It's going to be a good fight. Very, very tough, but I will go with Andrade. Not sure about this fight one little bit, though. Moving on to the next fight, we have Karl Williams versus Chase Sherman. Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Karl Williams should do whatever he wants in this fight. He's coming into the UFC with a great win. Looked really, really good throughout the fight. Chase Sherman, the record speaks for itself. 16-11, won in his last 5. You know, like, and they haven't looked good. Like, even his opponents that he's taken on, except maybe like Waldo Acosta here, that's an okay loss to have. But even before that, like, I don't think Chase Sherman's that great. I mean, absolutely no disrespect with that. But he comes in, and he's just one of those heavyweights that swings. He has some really good pressure. Every once in a while, he'll get a win. But Karl Williams looks to be one of those heavyweights that actually has, like, more than just their weight behind it. But the problem is, I was so sure that Braxton Smith was going to take care of Parker Porter. Sometimes you have these guys coming off the Contender Series, and I know Karl Williams has had a win, but you have these guys coming off the Contender Series, and sometimes I forget. I'm like, man, they haven't been with the guys who have been in there with the guys that Chase Sherman has been in there with. So I'm thinking like another Braxton Smith thing might happen here, but Karl Williams does look like he's way better than Braxton Smith. I don't mean to compare them, but I'm like talking about the UFC 288, what we just saw as a prime example. Heavyweights coming off of the Contender Series. I'm not, like, Karl Williams should win, but it wouldn't be surprising if we did see him go, oh, well, you know what? Well, so much for that hype train. You know what I mean? 420, though, I like the odds. Like, he should win. Like I said, he's a better fighter everywhere. He can have the takedowns. He'll probably be better striking. He has that power. I don't like Chase Sherman's chances at all in this fight. I'm going to go with Karl Williams to win here, but it is heavyweight. Anything can happen. Moving on to the next fight, we have two legends in Matt Brown versus Court McGee. Guys, Matt Brown is one of my favorite fighters of all time. Since I've been watching the UFC, he is one of my favorite fighters ever to do it. But I can't pick him. I can't pick Matt Brown to win. First of all, I rarely pick over 40 years old to win. Now, I understand Court McGee's 38, okay? He's 38 years old, getting old too, has a lot of miles on him. Both these guys are very out of their primes. But I just got bitten in the butt picking Clay Guida the other weekend. I was like, Clay Guida, you know what? He's looking good for a 40-year-old. But no, he just got absolutely dominated. I'm done with the picking the 40-year-olds, okay? I'm done. Matt Brown, though, okay? Let's talk about this matchup. First of all, another thing, if you guys aren't familiar with the fighters, because I know like there's been a lot of people that have just gotten into the UFC since the McGregor era, right? If you guys are not familiar, both of these records do not speak for themselves. Like 23-19, Matt Brown is much better than his record. Same with Court McGee, 21-11. Both guys have amazing wins over amazing opponents, and they never quit in their fights. They are always competitive. Very rarely will you see these guys get dominated. So if they're losing close fights against quality opponents. Matt Brown could be coming off of you could argue that it's a 2-fight win streak. Bryan Barberena, split decision. Fight could have went either way. I'd have to watch it again. I don't remember who I personally gave it to, but still. He didn't look good in that fight, but he could have won that fight. It's a very, very strong argument. Court McGee coming off of a tough loss against Jeremiah Wells. That's a problem, though. He definitely had a little bit more of a loss. Here's the thing. They're both slower now. They can't take as much damage as he used to, and Court McGee especially from his last fight. Matt Brown, though, he's been getting rocked in his recent times. Tough fight. I am going to pick Court McGee to win this. I think he will be able to use his takedowns in this fight, and I think that he will win a slow decision. I don't think any fighter will get finished. If somebody does get finished, I think it will be Court McGee. I could see Matt Brown landing a huge, huge elbow in the first round, but I don't think it will happen. I think Court McGee will be a little bit faster, a little bit better, and a little bit of a step ahead against Matt Brown. Matt Brown's one of my favorite fighters. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to bet on this fight, so it's going to be tough, man, because I always hate this. I'm going to bet, most likely, on Court McGee to win the fight, but Matt Brown is one of my favorite fighters of all time, and I'm going to be cheering for him, so I'm going to have like a little bit of like, oh no, but I really believe Court McGee is going to win this fight. I don't give Matt Brown a chance, man. Unless he wants to land a huge elbow at the beginning, I don't see it happening. I'm picking Court McGee to win this fight. Moving on to the next fight, guys, we have some exciting fights this weekend. I'm excited for it. We have Tim Means taking on Alex Morono. Now, Tim Means, the always exciting, always fun Tim Means, coming off of a loss where you could have, like, given that fight to him. He looked good in that fight. Well, I mean, not good, but it was a fight where that one could have went either way. Before that, very tough loss against Kevin Holland. Saw that one coming from a mile away. But before that, in his old age of 39, he's put together some nice wins. The opponents, you know what, they're okay, but still, he's looked okay. Alex Morono, on the other hand, coming off of a tough loss against Santiago Ponzinibbio, but he got KO'd after dominating that fight. He was doing great. I was like, oh my god, this dude's piecing up Ponzinibbio. He looked fantastic. Took the fight in a short notice too. Keep that in mind. I'm not docking him for that loss. Same with Tim Means' most recent loss. I'm not docking either of them for those losses. Alex Morono's one of those fighters that he's quietly been getting better every single time that we see him. And you know what? The opponents are very quality. I don't mind both guys, and Tim Means is 39 years old, pushing 40. He's been a little bit spotty, but I think Morono might be able to get the KO here. I'm kind of like, I would say like I'm 80-20 on this one. Tim Means is one of those fighters you can't count out. Dirty Bird is a very good nickname. He makes the fight dirty. He is always game, always ready to fight. But Alex Morono, I really like the way he's been performing recently. He just got caught in his last fight. And I have a hard time seeing Tim Means catching him with the same shot that Ponzinibbio did. I think Alex Morono will be able to dance around him in the striking, be a little bit, just a step ahead the whole time. I don't think it'll be like really, really dominating, but I still will pick Alex Morono to win this fight. I'm fairly confident in saying that. Tim Means is at the end of his career. And I was just talking about picking 40-year-olds, so I like Tim Means, but I got to go with Morono for this one. Moving on to the next fight, we have Daniel Rodriguez versus Ian Machado Garry. I always forget that Machado's in the middle of Ian Garry. We always just say Ian Garry, but I'm going to continue to say Ian Garry. Ian Garry has been looking good, and Ian Garry is my pick. Spoiler alert, Ian Garry, we did see him face adversity in his last fight against Kenan Song. Now, here's the thing. Do you want to knock him? Because Kenan Song, a very spotty record, not the best fighter ever. However, it depends how you look at this, and I'm looking at it from a positive perspective, okay? He gave Ian Garry some really, really big trouble last time. I'm looking at it in the sense it's the first time we've seen Ian Garry in trouble. We've seen him display heart. We've seen him display tenacity. He came back and looked for that finish after he was in huge trouble in that fight. Or do you want to look at it where he fought Kenan Song and had problems with it? Maybe Ian Garry is a little bit overhyped. I'm looking at it in the way of, hey, Ian Garry is not a hype train. This dude has a dog in him. Before that, it's a really solid style. He's had some really good wins against some decent quality opponents. 25 years old, looking great so far, and looking like he's been improving every single time, besides maybe his last performance. But I did like the way he performed last time. Ian Garry, very good striker, but hittable. Daniel Rodriguez, coming off of, in my opinion, you could look at this as two losses. Everybody thinks that Li Jingliang won this fight. It was a horrible, horrible robbery, that fight, in my opinion. So I'm looking at it, he's coming off of two losses, Li Jingliang and Neil Magny. He's not getting any younger. He's an okay striker. He might be due a little bit better because he doesn't have to worry about any takedowns in this fight, because we have seen a little bit of weakness in the ground game from Daniel Rodriguez. So he might be a little bit more confident in striking, but nothing really impressed me with Daniel Rodriguez ever. He's 36-year-old, getting up there in age. I think he'll be slower than the 25-year-old Ian Garry, who's very hungry. He has a very solid plan, bright future ahead of him. I'm very confident in this fight. I will be betting on Ian Garry in this fight, but a problem is, again, Good favorite, minus 240. I might have to parlay it with something, but again, we'll talk about that in a video later on in the week, what I'm going to be betting on. I like Ian Garry a lot in this fight, though. I think he's going to be quicker. I don't know. I don't think he'll finish Daniel Rodriguez because Daniel Rodriguez is really tough. I like Ian Garry for a very, very solid decision performance, though. The only worry is Ian Garry is a little bit hittable, and Rodriguez does have the power to be able to clip him. I don't think it's going to happen, though. If he gets clipped, we've seen Ian Garry survive. We've seen him do great. I think he's going to move on to 12-0. I like Ian Garry a lot in this matchup. That's my pick. Moving on to the co-main event, we have Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. This is a very, very interesting fight, and I don't really know what to think about it, to be honest with you. I will be cheering for Anthony Smith because I like Anthony Smith, okay? And he's been through a little bit of a rough go. He's coming off of a tough loss against Magomed Ankalaev, but Ankalaev is one of those fighters no shame in losing to. Before that, he's been on a really, really solid win streak. The opponents are like, you know what, Ryan Spann's a little bit of a better opponent to have a win over now, but before that, it was like, yeah, you know what, he won against Ryan Spann, whatever, you know what I mean? Johnny Walker, on the other hand, he's been in some problems with his UFC career, okay? We found out that Johnny Walker lacks a chin. Really tough loss against Thiago Santos and Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill's a very good loss to have, but losing to Thiago Santos is a bad loss to have. Then he came back, got 2 great wins over Ion Cutelaba and Paul Craig. Problem is, though, Ion Cutelaba, it depends how you want to look at that. The dude's chinny. It happens. Then you move on to Paul Craig. Paul Craig, he is not nearly as good as people thought he was. I saw the win coming from Paul Craig a mile away. I thought Johnny Walker was just a really good matchup for him. So it depends how you want to look at these. You know what I mean? Anthony Smith has the power to put Johnny Walker away, but Johnny Walker has moved to Ireland now, and he's been training with Kavanagh, and he's been looking good since he did it. He's apparently changing his entire life and dedicating himself to training, so I do like that when we're talking about Johnny Walker fighting. However, Anthony Smith is one of those fighters who has the power to put Johnny Walker away. This is a very not safe fight to bet on, and I don't know who's going to win. The whole thing for it, here's the whole thing for me. Is Anthony Smith going to catch him? And is Johnny Walker going to get chinned? Or is Johnny Walker going to come in there and still improve and just clock Anthony Smith? Anthony Smith is so tough to finish. He is such a tough fighter. But Johnny Walker, if he hits you, man, it's like it feels like a different power in the light heavyweight division. Very tough fight to pick. This is a 50-50 fight for me. I don't know. If you had a gun to my head, I would pick Johnny Walker. Just because I've liked what I've seen more recently from him, and we know Anthony Smith has also been dealing with some injuries, getting older, and he doesn't seem to be, he hasn't really, like, of course I can't say this for sure, but he doesn't seem to be as hungry as he once was. Johnny Walker, I like the momentum he has. I'm kind of convincing myself to pick Johnny Walker, but you can't trust that chin, man. I can't trust it. 50-50 fight. If you had a gun to my head, I would say Johnny Walker. But again, not a clue. Very, very good matchup for the co-main event, though. Moving on to the main event, we have Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Jailton Almeida. Now, a lot of people, and myself included, think that Jailton Almeida is one of the future heavyweight contenders, and I do believe that. The problem is, Rozenstruik is one of those guys that you can never count out, and I'm just looking at this right now. Wow, the odds are not at minus 560. That is a huge mistake. Last time I looked, Almeida was a very heavy favorite. So this is a mistake. Maybe it's 560 on the other side, but like, just keep that in mind if you're going to bet on this fight. You know what I mean? I like Jailton Almeida a lot in this fight. I think he's looked great so far at heavyweight. He was a 205er coming up. He's very fast, very strong for a heavyweight division. I think he'll be able to get the takedown and do what he does best and just beat the crap out of Rozenstruik. Problem is, Rozenstruik is one of those fighters with that power that you can never count out. Yeah, he's coming off a win against Chris Daukaus, but Chris Daukaus isn't exactly the best win to have. But before that, horrible performances, and Augusto Sakai is not a good win to have. It did not age well. Jailton Almeida has taken on opponents that aren't necessarily as good, but I don't know, like, it's nothing like crazy, you know what I mean? These 2 losses are significant steps up in competition, but Jailton Almeida has just done what he wanted to his opponents so far. And I think he's going to continue to do that. He looks like one of those heavyweights that's just a little bit of a different breed. I like him a lot. I think he's just going to do what he wants to do. The only sole issue that I have, another thing to mention that he's in his prime, but the only issue I have is we don't know how good his cardio is yet. This is a 5-round fight. We've seen Rozenstruik do it. If Jailton Almeida wrestles a lot and gets tired and isn't able to finish the fight, that might be a question, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik might just do what he does and knock him out. You know what I mean? He might just start piecing him up and then finish him. That's the only question I have, and that's why I'm staying away from this fight when I'm betting. But I am picking Jailton Almeida to win this fight. We haven't seen him struggle yet, and I don't think he will continue to struggle. Jailton Almeida is my pick to beat Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And that's going to do it for this card, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your picks are down below, and I would love to talk about it in the comments what you think about my picks. And I'm going to be coming out with a video later on in the week on what I am going to be betting. I'm going to look a little bit more into it, and I'll get back to you guys on it. But for right now, if you want to watch any more from the channel, 2 videos right here. Go check them out. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I will see you in the next video. Take care.